Summer is doing its darndest to show up. So I had to get some water. Okay. Hello again. It is nap time again. And we're back with the Silmarillion. I have more tabs. We got more stuff to talk about. We are in chapter 1. This stuff is dense sometimes. I love it though. I really do. All right, we're in chapter 1 today. So let's get going. I also have today my sketchbook because we're talking about places quite a bit in this chapter, and my spatial awareness is a little bit lacking, particularly when I'm trying to picture things in my head. So for me, I just was going through as I read, have some drawings to go with the chapter, just particularly the parts that don't line up with the map in the book, because there is a map in the book. Okay, so let's start with chapter 1 and beginning of days. And this officially starts the Cuenta Silmarillion, which is the history of the Silmarils. Chapter 1 is it sets the foundation for everything, starting with the first war, which is not any of the wars covered in the Lord of the Rings. It's not any of the wars involving elves and men. The Valar, the gods, go into Middle Earth, what is referred to as Arda, which is the physical world of the story. They enter into Arda, and Melkor, the bad guy, basically, he's already there, and he's already been there, turning things evil. There are already monsters and spirits that he's turned to his side and corrupted. He's already been doing some dirty work, so when they get in there, we come out guns a-blazing, and there is war immediately. Before, Arda was full shape. So Arda, what we know as Middle Earth, is not even fully formed yet, because it was the job of the Valar, who are now coming into the world, to shape the world for the children of Iluvatar, elves and men. Before they can even do that, there is war. Melkor is winning because he is the most powerful, he is the strongest. And then Tulkas decides to join the Valar and join in the fray. He's just ready for a fight. Melkor fled before his wrath and his laughter, which is a great picture. The Tulkas is like, ha, I'm ready to battle you. Melkor is defeated because he runs away. Melkor is the mightiest. It is stated over and over again. But he has something that none of the other Valar have, and that is fear. He is afraid, and that is his greatest weakness. None of the other Valar have fear. They are not afraid of things. And in this chapter, we will see that they are not perfect. They don't make the wisest decisions sometimes. Sometimes they're not cautious. Melkor flees. It says he forsook Arda. So he leaves the physical world. In my brain, that means he goes into the void, which is kind of the in-between space between where Iluvatar is and Arda, the physical world. So Melkor goes there. At this time, there is peace because Melkor has left. The Valar come in now and craft and create Middle Earth and create it perfect. And perfect meaning symmetrical. It's literally a landmass surrounded by water. I have a drawing, and my drawing is terrible, but it's a little bit helpful and to kind of get a picture. So they have land in the middle, waters and seas on either side, the encircling seas, and then in the middle of this central landmass is a great lake with an island in the middle, and that is where the Valar set up their first home. And you'll notice I said first for a reason. And this is what I call the era of the lamps. And it's a short era as far as text goes. And the lamps were created basically as light, because at this point in time, Arda is a flat surface. It is not a globe yet. It is kind of like in mythologies and in histories, when people were trying to understand the world, they viewed Earth as a flat surface, and the heavens were a flat surface of the sky and the stars. So that's kind of the idea of Middle Earth at the time, in the beginning of days, is that it's just flat. There is the wall of night, which is basically the edges of the world. And Melkor has gone beyond the wall of night. If that's too confusing, it's fine. It literally changes in like 3 paragraphs. This is the era of lamps, and there is a silver lamp and a golden lamp, and they are put at the north and south. Varda filled the lamps with light. Manwë hollowed them, and the Valar set them upon high pillars, more lofty than any mountains. One was raised to the north, and the other to the south. And it was lit as it were in a changeless day. There's no really rotation of timing, it's just constant light, and that is about to end. Aule and Tulkas. Melkor he hates everybody, but particularly these two, because Aule makes things and Tulkas fights. And they obviously have been doing a lot of work. Tulkas has been fighting, and Aule has been literally creating the world. So both of them are very tired, and the Valar set up their home on that middle island, have a feast where Tulkas marries Nessa, and she's kind of the moon to his sun. The kind of the soft feminine version. She's not going to necessarily fight, but she will race you. And she will win that race, and then she's going to dance around you, saying, ha ha ha. It's kind of her jam. They get married, and they have this feast, and the Valar are celebrating their new created world, and Tulkas takes a nap. Immediately when Tulkas falls asleep, that is when Melkor takes the opportunity to come back into Arda. Quintessential Melkor. He uses the light of the lamp to hide the fact that he is back. So he uses the fact that it's super bright to hide him coming back, and then immediately builds a fortress. There's no reason for a fortress. There's no war happening, but he builds one under the lamp. The imagery there of light and dark and opposites and all of that is it's very good. Immediately, it's like poison spreading through a wound. There are now weeds and slime and rank and poisonous things and breeding place for, oh, I like this one. Beasts became monsters of horn and ivory. And that made me think of the Mumakil, the Oliphant. I like that idea that those creatures are this old. I don't know if it holds up, but I like it right now. And then the Valar knew that Melkor must be back. They search and search for him and cannot find him. But Melkor, trusting the strength of his fortress, Autumno, and the might of his servants, which is interesting. I thought that he trusts in the might of his servants, not himself. And then he basically makes a surprise attack. Now is when Tulkas is resting. Now is when they are feasting and unaware. He's not dumb. Like, Melkor is crafty. The first thing he does, suddenly strikes. He takes out both the lamps and plunges the world into darkness. That was the point, is he wanted to destroy the lamps because he doesn't like light. He likes fire because it is destructive, and he likes darkness. He hides the evil deeds. So he overthrows the mighty pillars. The lands were broken. So these pillars were not just like little Greek columns. No, these were pillars that were part of the land. It's like these were made to be permanent fixtures, and he broke them, which destroyed the land and sea around them. The entire world was lit by these lamps. They're not little camp lanterns. These are massive things. The lamps spilled destroying flame that poured out all over. And the shape of Arda and its symmetry of its waters and its lands was marred. And the first designs of the Valar were never restored. And I think that's really important in the rest of the story, because sometimes we feel like, in seeing the maps of Middle-earth, the map just ends. And that's because of Melkor's destruction. I will point out, he built his fortress underneath the northern pillar, and his fortress remains. So there's an interesting choice that has to be made by the Valar. They can go after Melkor and destroy him, but they know in doing so it will cause more destruction to the world. And the whole point of them making Arda and making Middle-earth is for the children of Iluvatar, and they don't know where they are. They don't know where Iluvatar will begin them, to start them, because they are children of the world. So they have to have a home and a place to be born, and they don't know where that is going to be. So they don't want to do any more destruction to the world. So they could go pursue Melkor and, dig him out from his fortress, but that will destroy the land there. And if that is where Iluvatar had plans for elves and men to originate from, they are concerned that that will do harm to the children of Iluvatar. They feared to rend the earth again until they knew where the children of Iluvatar were dwelling, who were yet to come. So they don't know. So at first, their problem is that they have no fear, so they have no caution. It was easy for Melkor to surprise them. And that time before Melkor attacks was called the Spring of Arda. And that was the joyous time that the Valar always look back on with a bit of sadness. It was perfect. And then it was broken. Nienna, who is the lady of sorrow and wisdom, her thing is she looks back on the Spring of Arda as the thing that is lost, and that's kind of where her thoughtfulness and her sorrow comes from. This is kind of the beginning of it, and the first war before the Spring of Arda. Now we are going into things that are going to be more involved in bulk of the story and in the Lord of the Rings. The island where they had originally set up their home is completely destroyed. So they depart from Middle-earth, but not from Arda. So this is where the words get a little hard. Arda is the whole realm. Middle Earth is the lands that have men and elves and that kind of thing, where the stories take place. And the Valar live in Aman. But Aman in the Lord of the Rings, it is called the West. That is where the elves sail. They are going to the home of the Valar. And so now, because of First Home being ruined, the Valar set up more of a fortress for themselves. So there's a big expanse of ocean between Middle Earth and the West. They construct huge mountains along the coast to protect themselves. Pelori, that's the mountains. And they build a city and they build gardens and they build all kinds of things using all of their gifts, because each one of them have their gifts. At this time, there is no light. The entire world is just bathed in starlight. That is the only light, is stars that are from Varda. The Valar construct the West. So there's Middle Earth. I'll show you. I drew it in my picture. So there's Middle Earth, vast ocean, mountains fortifying the West, and then the walls of night. That is the bounds of this reality. Manwë and Varda set up their thrones on the highest mountain peak of the Pelori so that they can oversee everything. And he sends his eagles out, send messages, and give him reports of the world. And they bless the land. Nothing withers or fades. There is no stain, and it is beautiful. And then Yavanna, who is over the fruits and growing things and trees. Remember I said the hobbits would love her. She and Nienna have basically a singing session over some seeds. They create the two trees. And these two trees become very important all the way through the Silmarillion, all of the ages of Middle Earth, into the Lord of the Rings stories, all the way through. These trees are important. From here on out, these trees are going to be referenced, and there's callbacks to them and that kind of thing. So these two trees, and they're similar to the lamps, and then there's silver and gold. It's like rain that falls from them. The water is silver or gold, depending on the tree. And there's silver and gold light, and they glow and alternate. And then there's 2 times of the day where the two lights mingle into a beautiful dawn light of silvery gold. Those art exhibits that have the projections of Van Gogh or whatever? I want them to do that with these trees. How beautiful would that be? So begins the count of time. This is why this chapter is the beginning of days. The first war and the spring of Arda kind of happens before time begins, really. And then the trees and their alternating lights. Now we have a mark of time. Time is occurring and passing. So the silver tree is called Telperon. The second tree, that's the golden tree, is called Lorelin. The lands of Galadriel during the Lord of the Rings is derived from the name of this tree. And then Varda creates basically giant bowls that collect the water that drips from the two trees. Thus began the count of time. But as the ages drew to the hour appointed by Iluvatar for the coming of the firstborn, that is the elf, Middle Earth lay in a twilight beneath the stars that Varda had wrought in the ages forgotten of her labors in Ea, that is the earth. They've made these trees to give light, but they've also constructed huge mountains between themselves and the rest of the world. So these trees are not shining light onto Middle Earth. So it is Varda has really given them the twilight light of her stars. And Melkor is there, brooding in the dark, of course. And he still often walked abroad in many shapes of power and fear. And that's I think this is a little bit important for later on. The Valar and the Maiar, they take different shapes. They are technically spirit beings made physical, is the best way to describe it. It's still not a great way to describe it, because Melkor is a deceiver and his servant Sauron, also a deceiver. They often take on different forms and shapes, and they change their shapes. And there are also occurrences of other Maiar changing their shapes. There are also occurrences of other Maiar and Valar who maintain the same shape and who will always appear a certain way. That's something that we'll talk about as this goes on. This is the problem that happens, is that basically the Valar are a little bit scarred from the destruction of the spring of Arda. It's kind of messed with them a little bit, so they kind of close themselves off to the rest of Middle Earth, and they're really not paying attention. A couple of them are. In particular, Manwë is always watching, because that's literally his job, and he is very good at his job. Aule made the rocks and made the mountains, and he made the land. A lot of his creations are still out there in Middle Earth and being unattended and uncared for, and he's not okay with that. Let's put it that way. And also Yavanna, the Hobbit lady, that's what I keep calling her. But she also, a lot of what's in Middle-earth at the moment are her creations and his creations, and they still have a great love and desire to be back in Middle-earth and be involved. Oh yes, and then we have the mention here of the Noldor, and for lack of a better term, they're a clan of elves. I'll show you in the chart in a little bit. They are the ones who learn the most from Aule. He is called the friend of the Noldor, and then we have this sentence of foreshadowing. The Noldor also it was who first achieved the making of gems. Fairest of all gems were the Silmarils, and they are lost. Dun dun dun. The Manwë, the far-seeing, is seeing all the things in all the lands. Spirits in the shape of hawks and eagles flew ever to and from his halls. They are Maiar. They are spirits who have put on the form of eagles. Maiar will put on shapes. And a couple of those shapes that we are familiar with are the wizards. They are Maiar who put on the shape of old dudes, basically. And the eagles are another one of these shapes. I think, and this is maybe a hot take, but Ungoliant, I think, is one of those spirits who puts on a form, but they are a corrupt and evil spirit. That's just me, my thoughts on that. But Melkor is hidden from the eyes of all the servants of Manwë, and he sat in dark thought, impenetrable shadows. And then we kind of have a little aside, it's a bit random, but it's okay, about elves and men, and that the elves were made in similarity to the Valar, which I think is a little bit obvious. They appear to men and to the hobbits. I think in particular we see in Lord of the Rings the elves are a little bit like holy beings, these otherworldly, like, oh, demigods almost, that they are made to be similar to the Valar. The elves never leave Arda, much like the Valar never leave Arda. Men are different. Men die and they leave Arda. The elves do not know where they go. I made a mistake last time when I was talking about the Halls of Mandos, and I made a mistake of saying that men go there, and that's not true. Only elves go to the Halls of Mandos. Men are made with short lives because they desire something beyond this world. So my philosophy on that, or my theory, I guess, on that is men go back to Iluvatar. They go direct to the source. Like, they just go. So we have a little aside about that. The main problem that elves have with men is that men remind them of Melkor. They are most like him, and that's kind of fair, but also not fair. Like, there's kind of both. As we will see in the Silmarillion, elves aren't great either. So we have Ulmo. Ulmo the Grumpy. This is always what I think of. Ulmo is the god of the ocean, god of the sea, and he basically lives in the absolute depths of the sea and just sits down there and is grumpy and sad with his horns that bellow in the deep. Still, he has never forsaken Middle-earth, now or ever. Even the ruin and change of the world does not drive him off or deter him in any way. I talked about Yavanna and Aule already a little bit, how they really want to go back to Middle-earth and to be involved in things there. Yavanna in particular wants to fix the things that were broken in the war with Melkor and his attack and the breaking of the lamps and all that. She wants to go back and fix it, and so does Aule. It's not that they're not allowed to, it's just like the timing isn't right, and they're very respectful of that. Very much part of the Valar's deal. Also, Orme, who is the tamer of beasts, which is an interesting term, because I think he is, but he also is kind of the slayer of beasts, and he's a hunter, but also a tamer? I don't really know how that works out, but still, he is going freely. So that's what I mean about Yavanna and Aule wanting to fix what broke in the ruining of the Spring of Arda. They want to go fix it. They are free to do that. There's nothing necessarily holding them back other than it isn't time yet. But Orme, he's out there currently just dealing with the problems. Orme rides out on his white horse, Nahar. Nahar? I'm gonna go with that. It sounds cool. His white horse Nahar shone like silver in the shadows because remember, it's just twilight from the stars there. So he's on this gleaming white horse, like how terrifying, but also super cool, like blowing his horn and riding on this glowing horse and slaying beasts, slaying monsters and taming beasts. Apparently is a difference, and probably a very important difference. From him evil shadows fled away, and Melkor himself quailed, foreboding the wrath to come. But even as Orme passed, the servants of Melkor would gather again, and the lands were filled with shadow and deceit. Not all's great in Middle-earth right now. The Valar a bit holed up in their castle kind of vibe is what's going on at the moment. And we are talking about the difference between elves and men a little bit. Men have strange gifts, is how it's worded. That men are different and they are given different gifts, and just the description of that is beautiful. It does end a bit morbid now that I'm looking at it. It's not just me, it's the book. It's a bit morbid because we're talking about the gift of men, of basically of death. We're at the very end of the chapter here, and it says, "But the sons of men die indeed and leave the world. Therefore they are called the guests, or the strangers. Death is their fate, the gift of Iluvatar, which as time wears, even the powers shall envy. But Melkor, dun dun dun, again, has cast his shadow upon it and confounded it, that is the gift of death, with darkness, and brought forth evil out of good and fear out of hope." So that is chapter 1, where kind of laying the foundation of the world, quite literally, the foundation of everything. I will show you now just where the Noldor are. I'll show you the map that is in the book, and then I'll show you the map that I made. So let me move my camera real quick. Hello. Welcome to the coffee table. Okay, so first I will show you here in my beautiful Silmarillion book with all of my tabs. So we have some charts here in the back, which is where how I also is just we have an index of all of the elf words and all of the names and everything. They're all here in the back, which is really, really helpful because there's a lot. Okay, so here we have a chart. And in this chart we have, this is the Quendi, the elves. And we have, it already starts with 2 sections. So this will be more important in chapter 3, but because we mentioned the Noldor in this chapter, I thought I'd just touch on it. So we have the Quendi, that's all the elves. Quick spoilers, the Valar go get them, basically, because they want to be with them. And there's this section of them who never, ever come, and they are unwilling to make the great journey, and they stay. And that's a problem. They are the unwilling elves, the Avari, and that is because they are corrupted by Melkor. As usual, it's Melkor's fault. The Eldar, you may recognize that word from Lord of the Rings. The Eldar are the elves that do go. And then of the Teleri, there is kind of those that break off and don't make the full journey. And here are the Noldor. We are going to be talking a lot about them, but all 3, they will be in our story in the Silmarillion. And then I will show you a quick sneak peek. This is map of Beleriand. So you know the map of Middle Earth is much bigger. This is one section of Middle Earth. And this section of Middle Earth is gone by the time this story ends. It's helpful because the north, in the chapter we read today, Melkor made a fortress in the north. Just to keep that in mind, because as the story goes on, everything north is, and especially if it's north and if it's mountains, be careful. Okay, now I will show you my pictures that helped me kind of figure out what the heck we were talking about. Okay, so maybe this helps a little bit. So we've got, this is the really, really basic one. Hello. Oh, hello. That's better. Zoom in a bit. Okay, so this one here we'll do first. So this is really, really broad. Arda is just everything on this side, and then the realm of Iluvatar is over here. And the void is the thing in between. Then we have the wall of night, and this is, Melkor goes back and forth across here, basically, in this first chapter. He's here, and they have a war, and then he flees when Tulkas arrives. When Tulkas rests and there's kind of a quiet, that's when he comes back. He's here in the void and darkness because he likes the dark. And so we have the walls of night, the outer sea, and then the inner sea, kind of, and then Middle Earth. That's broad strokes. Okay, next. This was very helpful for me. So this is the state of Middle Earth after the First War during the Spring of Arda. So Melkor comes in and makes his fortress of, oh, it started with a U. No. So the fortress is under this lamp. And then there's the lamp down here. So the 2 lamps, the encircling sea, the land, there's a great lake, and then the first home of the Valar. I didn't mean to cross out. So the first home is in this island. Melkor comes and then breaks it all apart. Then we get this over here. Focus, focus, people. Okay, so then after the spring and the whole like donut looking thing that I drew, Pelori, Silmarillion, and there's an accent on one of those, and I'm not sure which it is. Their new home here is the West. There's the thrones of Manwë and Varda, so they can look out both ways, and here are the mountains, as they're basically to make this a fortress to defend against Melkor, because they've learned their lesson. He's going to do it. And then we have a wide expanse of sea, and it is said many, many times that only the Valar know how wide it is, and they do not tell the elves how wide the sea is. It is there for a purpose to separate, just like this is purpose to defend. And then we have Middle Earth proper over here. Clear as mud? Awesome. Welcome to the Silmarillion. Next time we will be reading chapter 2, Aule and Yavanna, and they will be going back to Middle Earth. All right, so see you next time.